Welcome to NC Spin Perspectives, thoughts from opinion leaders in North Carolina. Glad to welcome again Joe Stewart, President and CEO of the North Carolina Free Enterprise Foundation. Joe, the legislature has gone home. The sense of relief, at least in Raleigh and Wake County, is just palpable. People are tired, they're worn out, they're angry, they're ready to take a break from this. So the question is, as these legislators go back home, how are the voters reacting and responding to what they've done?
Well, Tom, to paraphrase what many famous people have said, if democracy was easy, more people would do it. The challenge is that sometimes the legislative process is complicated. People have different opinions. There are different perspectives on the issues. There are two chambers that have to reconcile whatever it is the final product is. Here we had the Republicans in charge of both chambers, the Republicans in charge of the governor's office, and they found themselves with some serious points of disagreement on some key and fundamental issues, and it made it a little lengthier and perhaps more contentious than it might have been otherwise. Now, I've been around this process, as have you. Certainly, it's not unique to Republicans to be fighting within their own ranks. The Democrats did it when they were in charge as well. But I think fundamentally what was accomplished in this legislative session was important to Republican incumbents to be able to go home and say they dealt with the coal ass issue and they dealt with the teacher pay issue. And those are things that they feel very strongly they needed an answer for back in their districts. We'll have to see if Democratic incumbents and Democratic challengers can raise a counter argument to that. But I think by and large, voters are not necessarily attuned to the acrimony of the legislative session as an issue in an election. It's more about the accomplishments.
We've already seen between $25 and $30 million spent, mostly by independent expenditure groups, on the U.S. Senate campaign. A political consultant told me recently that internal polling shows a lot of the voters, a large number of voters, are turned off, they're tuning out, and in some instances have already said they're going to stay home. They just don't care in this election. How prevalent do you think that is?
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to a political consultant recently who said some polling data he had seen showed independent-minded voters, people who don't describe themselves as either being Democrat or Republican in their partisan orientation, almost 100% of them said they don't believe any political ad anymore. It's hard to imagine that even just after a couple of election cycles since the Citizens United case made independent expenditure so prevalent, voters haven't gotten so sophisticated that they're able to sort of take into consideration what the content of these ads are and form their own opinion as to whether what's being stipulated in that ad is true or not. I just begin to wonder if there's not some diminishing returns. We had a case in our primary, Robin Hudson, an incumbent member of the state Supreme Court, very strong anti-ads run against her.
And the voters said they were tired of seeing her beat up.
Yeah, and she went on to win the primary. So some part of it may have been just to build her name recognition, to even have a negative ad say her name over and over. But I begin to wonder if by the end of this election cycle, by election day in November, if a significant portion of the voters are just so fed up with these ads that they either don't participate or they stop listening altogether.
And I think everybody agrees that these unaffiliated or independent voters are very, very important to the candidates as they're running their campaign, especially to Democrats. And so if you're looking at these November elections, I think most people would say it's virtually impossible because of the redistricting and the gerrymandering that was done, virtually impossible for Democrats to regain control of either the House or the Senate. But wait a minute, let me stop. You're the organization that studies all of that. Tell me, is that accurate?
Well, it looks like at this point, and we're always quick to say we don't predict elections. We talk about what's likely based on a number of different factors. I'd say at this point, it seems unlikely that the numbers change too significantly in terms of the Republican and Democratic balance of power in the General Assembly. As you pointed out, most of the districts are drawn in such a way that the historic voter partisan performance will manifest itself in this election, and the incumbent or the challenger or the open seat race candidate of either party will win just based on the way the lines are.
And roughly 50% of the legislature has already been elected.
Yeah, exactly right. So there are very few races where the districts are legitimately competitive on a partisan basis. So,
but there are some.
There are some, and they're mostly in the metropolitan areas, in these suburban areas around major metro of Raleigh and Charlotte. Even Asheville, to some extent, has a little bit of that dynamic now in some of its legislative districts. But looking at the races individually, there may be some surprises as a result of a local issue, or voters have a perception of a candidate that doesn't necessarily manifest itself in polling data. But I don't think at this point anything that we're aware of as of now would lead us to believe that the balance of power will change too significantly.
Thank you for watching NC Spin Perspectives. More perspective pieces all during the week on ncspin.com.